What advice do you have for an 18-year-old? Start learning that thing that you want to learn now. Math, programming, music, language, drawing, whatever it is, start now. You're going to feel like or be made to feel like yours is so you deserve, should have ABC. You're 25, you should be able to vacation in the Caribbean if you want. You're making such and such salary, you should be able to afford this new gadget. Yeah, don't fall for that stuff. It's going to be tempting, but do not under any circumstances create credit debt. Max your 401k benefits to what your company matches. If your company matches up to 10%, do 10%, and while you may need a degree in finance to understand investments and money, you don't need one to invest. Make an account, invest in stocks and or ETFs, like a collective stocks, and just put some money in it over time. If you really want to get fancy, look into what industries are growing. For example, now is a great time to invest in industries hit hard by COVID like cruise companies. I don't have large enough sample sizes to make generalizations about entire genders. What I can talk about is myself. So, what I can say is that after having 4 boyfriends, my ability to identify and avoid dangerous men was vastly improved, and my ability to identify and avoid dangerous women was, apparently not particularly improved at all. I was very attuned to red flags involving sexism and completely unprepared for the fact that a woman who majored in women's studies could perfectly well destroy years or decades of my life with no sexism necessary at all. One thing I noticed back when I was dating was that women have a lot more baggage when it comes to physical intimacy. Women go through a lot, they have tons of pressures put on them. Many have had negative sexual experiences. It's, well, just more complicated. The guys I dated were frankly much more direct and more simplistic about it. I'm not saying either of these descriptions apply to all women or men, but that was my experience. With guys it was like, hey, wanna make out? And just sort of that simple. Dating a man feels like one of your male best friends decided he likes dick one day. Dating women feels softer, and even though common interests are there, there's more of that listening to their interests because they like it and you're interested in them and not because you care about the subject at hand. They both still have that same tenderness and butterfly feeling. That's been my experience so far anyways. The whole base of the relationship is pretty different. Most gay men are into this whole dominate versus submissive thing, and it's a lot of their life, personality. With women it's more about just being together, I would say. My personal experiences I'm sure are very different from others, but my most notable difference I've realized is that men are going to enjoy doing manly-ish things together, but it's a lot of compromise with women, doing what they want and them doing what you want. It's a lot less complicated with men if I'm being extremely honest. It's much harder to find a girl who wants to date you than a guy if you're a girl. Either you keep finding straight women, or you both are afraid of being too forward and no one makes the first move. Guys are way less shy about it, but since it's so much harder to get a girlfriend, the relationships with women tend to last longer, because we wouldn't have gotten together if we weren't pretty sure we were compatible. Other than that, there's not a huge difference. Individual people are more unique than men are from women, if that makes sense, but I will say I've never had to fight with or teach a woman why something that happened to me was misogynistic. It's more likely that she's experienced something similar. This probably isn't an accurate representation, but it has at least been my experience. When dating a man, he is very okay with me being bisexual. When dating a woman, it constantly comes up that I'm actually straight or just going to leave her for a guy. It is really annoying to have someone try to completely invalidate your feelings for them because of your dating history. Yes, I've dated more men. I didn't realize until I had been dating for several years that dating women was a viable option. This is all based on my own experiences and in no way should be read as sincere and committed observations that apply to everyone, everywhere. I find men to be more romantic and more interested in monogamy. Women are easier to talk to and easier to argue with and then be able to walk back from the argument sooner. Men are more forward, at least initially. Two girls could have a crush on each other for 10 years and never work up the nerve to mention it. Men usually want to hammer out plans towards the end of a date, for the next date, but women are usually more go with the flow, let's see what happens. Oh, and girls are much better at handling rejection and boundaries. Actually, just one much, I've had incidents here and there that were pretty awful from girls, but much more often, men are really bad at rejections on like any level. Bisexual lady here. Men have a tendency to assume that you're looking for a more serious relationship than they are, even if you explicitly say otherwise, and are suckers for cuddles. Women like kissing more. I've actually been married to both genders, which feels like a crazy thing to say, but I guess not. I'm a woman, married to a woman. I was married to a man in my very early 20s. To be honest, people are people, and after a certain span of time with someone, the gendered aspect of their behavior doesn't make a notable difference. That being said, the major difference I've noticed has to do with gender roles and communication. With a man, there was definitely more pressure to conform to stereotypical gender roles. For instance, it seemed obvious that my ex would mow the lawn, handle the hard labor stuff, and I'd manage the cooking and laundry. I realize it's not this way for everyone, but in my experience there was an expectation inside and outside of the relationship revolving around expectations and gender roles. This also was evident when communicating expectations about chores. My ex would need to be told, please help me with this chore, and then I'd have to explain how to do said chore. It was more of a struggle. In a relationship with two women, this doesn't really exist. There is an expectation that one of us does specific chores, whoever is best at that task, or whoever gets there first is it. There's less scorekeeping, less explaining, etc. As for communication, it is easier. In my experience, communicating with the same sex, it's easier to empathize and understand another woman and be on the same wavelength. Explaining things to my ex felt like a translation exercise. Also, women are more vulnerable and open and willing to talk at length about emotions. I think this is likely due to a toxic social stigma that sees vulnerable, emotional men as weak, so it would be great if we could raise men without the burden of toxic masculinity. Of course, this is all my experience and others will have different answers. Bye from here. From my personal experiences, I have noticed that the biggest differences are the ways we communicate with one another and how this relates to the speed of which we come to be incredibly close with women. I have found that those relationships tend to form a deeper connection much faster. I think this is partly because there's already an unspoken, or sometimes spoken, understanding of what it's like to be a woman and the daily struggles we all face. And when we do converse about it, it's not only judgment-free, but there is a greater freedom in our words because we find comfort and trust in knowing that it's, oftentimes, a mutual experience. With that bond already existing, it makes it easier to fall into a more intimate relationship faster. While some men may have a tighter grasp on the struggles a woman faces, they, likely, haven't experienced it personally. This creates more hoops to jump through, but that's not necessarily a negative thing. It really just means more time is spent communicating these issues that would otherwise already be understood by another woman. With that said, conversations like that with male partners can totally deepen the relationship just as much, but it'll take a bit more time. By man chiming in, from the women and men I have dated, men seem to be easier to manage, whereas women will take a lot more. However, that's just on the surface. The guys I've been with, It's really hard to get them to open up if they have issues, within the relationship and outside of it. For me, men are much easier to be with. It sounds stereotypical, but there's not much drama between them, and anything that's small gets done relatively quickly. Women tend to make a bigger deal out of it, but take that with a grain of salt. The women I've been with were not very good people. I have more sexual attraction to women, but more romantic attraction to men. Both of all can be complete knockouts in your own way, and rock it. Bisexual women, while women definitely are as picky as men say, and maybe a little more shallow, in my experience, dates are significantly more fun. Conversation is generally better. It can feel like you've been best friends and they're down to do whatever crazy shit. The hit it and quit it aspect is also a more digestible experience because they'll usually be upfront about their intentions or know how to tell you they aren't into anything more. The only perks I've had with dating men is that 1, they aren't as picky, as mentioned, and 2, they honestly tend to be funnier. However, I typically think women are funnier than men, but when I've dated a guy it usually feels more like I'm going to dinner with my brother. Who I will also be fucking at some point. Sex with either gender is hit or miss. I'm a bi woman and I found that women are so much easier to talk to. They usually tell you exactly what they feel when they feel it, mostly because they're either crying about it or shouting at you. Haha, the communication was so much better while dating a woman. I dated only women for the longest time simply because the communication was so much better. Also, women seem to be more romantic and I'm a hopeless romantic, so this was always a quick way to win my heart. Both sexes come with a lot of drama, but women tend to be more emotional. Edit, this is just my personal experience. All relationships I've had with men have been extremely short-lived. Not in a superficial way, but they usually get bored easily / don't have a concrete plan or future. The relationships I've had with women are much harder to maintain in the beginning, but once you're comfortable with each other, it'll last like years. Personally, I think my relationships have been this way because of social heteronormativity. Men are usually just more available and more upfront. I don't find myself seeking them as much as I do with women. 23F. When on a date with a guy, going to the bathroom is a great way to get some space. When on a date with a girl, if you say I have to use the bathroom, the girl usually says, oh me too, let's go lol. Bi male here but still closeted. Is that an apartment term? All the women I came out to were cool with it, yet acknowledged the fear about cheating with men. There's definitely a huge difference between gay men and DL men. Gay men can be clingy and never stop talking. DL men have sex and then usually fuck off or sit and watch sports, which is great because they don't talk too much. I've never truly dated a man, so I guess my experience is limited. Cunnilingus is easier than fellatio. As a guy who's dated only feminine guys and women, I haven't seen any real difference personality-wise. Can't say for masculine guys, or for more in-between guys, as in not particularly feminine or masculine. I can imagine the dynamic would be a lot different, like having a bro that you also fuck. I don't really date men, it's usually just sex. I date women in the hopes of finding the one, but the sex is equally as good on both sides. I think that's mostly due to me being so picky. Pansexual girl here. The main differences I've seen in men and women is trust. Men tend to be more trusting but also don't tell you a lot of things. They tend to only give vague answers and, in my experience, don't tell you their feelings. Women tend to be very trusting and are basically your best friend. They tell you everything from what they ate to a cute bug they found. Hi, I'm 17. How do you tell if you're bisexual? Like, for some reason since I was 14 I have always gotten sexually aroused by other men. At first I thought I was gay, then I noticed that I had also gotten horny by females too, then I had just thought that was normal since I was hitting puberty, and as I got older I still feel this way. So got any tips? So is it normal or am I bi? Bifem. Women tend to be on the same level as me and just know how my mind works, even thought we're both complicated in a twisted way, and they give me mega snuggles on my period. Men take a half minute to half understand my brain and just give me some chocolate on my period or say oh if that sucks. By women. If a man doesn't want to talk to you, they'll answer the phone and be intentionally non-communicative until you hang up or leave. If a woman doesn't want to talk to you, she just won't answer. I feel like women step out ahead to prevent things more. Totally see and get why. If a man wants to talk to you, he'll jump straight in your DMs with something friendly. If a woman wants to talk to you, there has to be a whole palpable reason for the conversation to get started. If my relationship to a guy falters, it's usually because of unmet promises, insincerity, lack of bother to make an effort, all talk no action. If my relationship to a lass falters, it's usually a specific incident, betrayal, uncertainty, fear of commitment, or a preemptive dismissal. Women smell better. Women are ethereal. Your wardrobes will literally become one homogeneous, breathing entity. Men tell you realistic truths that are refreshing and help keep things authentic. I feel like guys use people because they think, "Ooh, look at this shiny individual, I want to keep them like an interesting trinket," instead of developing that all-important connection. And women use you looking for a band-aid to internal issues they have. Lack of self-esteem or attention, for example. I feel women can also absolutely bombard and maximus the shit out of your trust in 12 hours, but for men it's like a slow, painful realization that even though they deny it, they don't really care. I love men and women, but my dating record with both of them is worse than an entropic train wreck falling down the stairs. If you want to drink alcohol, don't drink like a teenager. Young people are used to not being allowed to have alcohol, so when they get the opportunity, they think the optimal use is to get as drunk as possible. This is a mistake. Getting trashed is not the optimal use of alcohol. No matter what college parties might suggest, a decent buzz will probably be more enjoyable of a night for you, and what's more, you'll get to enjoy the memories of that night because you didn't black out and forget all the fun you supposedly had. That dumb thing you're going to buy when you first get a lot of money, don't buy that dumb thing, or the next one, or the next one. Save or invest that money, and then when you've seen all your friends buy dumb things and you realize that they're dumb, go buy something smart. There is living conservatively, and then there is fucking living. You can spend your entire life benching pennies and saving every dime you make and taking every bit of overtime you can and seizing every pay raise you can, but you will miss out on life. And vice versa. The longer you put off developing a set of employable skills, however that may be, the harder it will be to do so later in your life. So balance the two. Yes, fucking live, but also, try to make steps and strives to securing a future. Don't jump head first into a toxic relationship. I wasted 18 to 23 being stuck in one, and it cost me friends. I missed out on experiences, and I'm pretty sure it's left me with permanent anxiety, depression issues. Enjoy being young while you still are. Don't try to grow up too fast. You will always be growing and learning. This means sometimes friends grow apart or you grow to like different things. This is healthy. You might have a plan. You might not. Expect your life to completely change direction every few years. Be flexible. Just because you didn't meet a goal or because one door has closed doesn't mean it's game over. It's going to really feel like everything is over, but I pinky swear it isn't. Life has a way of figuring itself out, and the more often you see it, the more you can trust it. Listen to people. You will learn this in your 20s. When you are 18 you think becoming an adult you know everything. By the time you are 21 you realize you know nothing. The older generation shouldn't be shrugged off, dismissed or disrespected because they're out of touch. Their experience is way more valuable than whatever trend or wave you are following short term.